Hello and welcome to another episode of Test, Optimize, and Scale. Excited to have Eric and Marita here today from a visual facilitation agency. Visual facilitation, a term that I am now very excited about. Founders of Relumed out of Madison, Wisconsin. Eric and Marita, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. And I know our teams have been in a close contact over the past couple months. Definitely excited about everything it is that you guys do. Would you mind giving the audience a bit of a glimpse of everything you guys do at Relumed and your story getting here to this point?
Absolutely.
Where do you want to start?
How about you give the story first, and then I'll pick up on it.
All right, sounds good. So before we got married,
we're going way back now.
Yeah, coming up on 13 years. I was graphic design was one of my hard skills, and I had to make a decision. Did I want to go off on my own and be a freelancer, or do I want to work for a studio? And I knew that at that point I could make that choice without a lot of ramifications because we weren't married yet. There wasn't a lot of expectations on me as in the workforce, that sort of stuff. So I could try something out. And I did. And taking that step, working for myself, started to open up a lot of doors. And so, it was one of those things where either the universe or the neighborhood you're in is starting to signal to you that you're doing the right thing. So I followed that from the community and started working for myself. And we moved from Chicago up to Madison, which is a little bit friendlier to lifestyle and a comfortable ease, et cetera. But I still had clients all over the US. And so this, modern remote work, connecting with clients from other places isn't anything new. But it allowed us to kind of be anywhere. And it was in building that some of the first opportunities for me to start, not just a freelance or consultancy, but a business that could scale, a business that had legs to it, that opportunity came up, and that was in building TrueScribe. So in 2011, I started TrueScribe, co-founded that with a couple of other partners who had other skills in sales and administration to fit next to my creative and product and project oriented skill set. And then TrueScribe is a whiteboard video production studio where we create custom whiteboard videos for a lot of Fortune 500 companies. And we had a lot of great growth in the early years. We hit Inc. 500's list at 253 from our first 3 years of growth. Mm-hmm. And then in 2015, we launched software to see if we could take the robust system that we'd created for creating video and turn that into an automated process that anybody could use. Input text, output whiteboard video for the high demand of content in this day and age. So that was 2015, and then now as of 2020, Marita and I have stepped out to build something together. I always say every step of that way, even though Marita wasn't an official partner, she was dealing with all the ups and downs, and she's experienced every bit of that. And so I also use that to say that she knows exactly what she's getting into when we're studying this business. But it allows us to work together, taking the skill sets that we have that complement each other, her ability to listen, to ask questions, to be curious, to create space for our clients, entrepreneurs, business owners, leaders to share and to divulge and to not feel like they're being weak or being exposed in a negative way. And then my side, where I get to just capture that through visuals and show that back to them, reflect that back to them, and get people on the same page with what's in their heads. So that's where we're at today with Relumed.
Yep. And so you mentioned visual facilitation agency, not a super popular term out there. One of the things that we note with starting creative service-based companies is that we get to kind of make up our own terms. We like to be creative in that as well. We did not make up visual facilitation, but it is fairly rare. So what it means is that we are working with clients, we are working with leaders, entrepreneurs, business owners, and their teams on vision, strategy, and alignment through facilitated conversations. I do the facilitation, Eric does the visuals, he does the live drawing during this, and we're able to help those teams move ahead in new and creative ways.
I love it. And the balance, hearing about communications and visuals and the overall partnership. I'm such a strong believer in team and having an understanding of what you guys have created. And I am really a fan of the idea of getting founders to open up, creating a space where they can develop their messaging beyond what they may feel comfortable with in a different setting.
Absolutely, absolutely. The idea of entrepreneurship is kind of lonely sometimes.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of expectations put on the entrepreneur, and there's a lot of things that we are expected as entrepreneurs to excel at and to be ready to go from day one. But you need that space and you need that support in order to really realize the vision that you have. And that's something that we are able to offer. And I think that that the entrepreneurs that we've worked with and the leaders that we've worked with really respond to and really feel that need.
Absolutely.
I think, entrepreneurs, business owners, leaders, like all of us humans, we have a set of skills, our strengths, and we have things that we could use some help in and support in. And I think communicating the vision that's in our head is one of those that, especially in areas where you've got a technical founder or you've got somebody who's very specialized, has deep knowledge in an area. But how do you communicate that to somebody who has no clue in that? And that's important, not just for marketing, not just for sales, but also for getting your team aligned and helping your team see that everything is pointing in the same direction.
And you wear so many hats as an entrepreneur, roles that may be fulfilled by 20, 50 more people at times in a larger type of organization. So to be able to have collaboration with experts in their given fields, to be able to make it easy to engage in that and really take things to the next level in terms of creative, or I should say visualization at an early stage, really goes a far way. And in terms of how the audience, how potential strategic partners or groups within a vertical may perceive a brand, if their visuals are that much further along.
Absolutely. One of the things that the visuals that Eric does allows is to create kind of a visual map of what's in a founder's head. And often when a founder is talking about their business, which, we feel that too, as we're talking about Relumed, we offer this little piece of it, but there's all these other parts that we forget to share, or we forget to give that context. And when we sit down with somebody, we get that whole brain dump, we get everything out there. And that allows people to see that bigger picture and to set that path forward intentionally. Yeah,
I think sometimes as an entrepreneur, like you said, you have to wear a lot of different hats and you're talking to a lot of different people in very precise or small pieces. And so you've got the whole picture and you're giving one piece of it over here and one piece of it over here and one piece over here because that's efficient and it's quick. And I got to get all the pieces moving. But when people start to compare their work or see what somebody else is doing, they don't see how this fits. Why would they see how this fits? The founder is usually the one who, if not the first to connect those dots, right? Is the one connecting it in a unique way to the rest of the market. So we're just trying to make sure that that map that's in their head is in plain view for everybody else.
Absolutely. And I have some ideas of what that map looks like, but what are your processes? You guys have some coined systems and how you approach this with founders, with different startups, right?
We do. Yeah. Eric, why don't you pull up some of that and we will show it as we tell it.
Okay.
So we've actually created our own framework. We call it the Constellation System. And Eric is a big fan of metaphor. And as he's pulling this up, I'm sure he'll be ready to share all of the reasons that constellation is the reason that is the name that we've chosen.
Yeah. So when we talk about constellations, there's a few things, the reasons that metaphor works for us. One, constellations have been used throughout history to capture story, right? We put them up there in plain view, then we share that with the next generation. And so that same kind of passing of the torch is what we do in our business, from the founder to the individual contributor to the market, right? we've used constellations to navigate, to find our place on this planet and to get from point A to point B. And so that kind of clear guide that's above the weeds, above the forest, that allows us to kind of know that we're on the right path. And then in modern days, constellations are no longer just the pictures we see in our Greek mythology, but they're kind of all the stars in that space. And scientists point their instruments up at that section of the sky and say, okay, who are we in relation to that? Okay, what does the information in that space there mean to us? And so we use, in the same way, we use our constellation model to pull out stories, to create maps that guide people to the destination, and to explore complex topics and problems and the issues that we run into, to double check, do we know all the pieces that are going into this, or are there any gaps or assumptions that we're making that are exacerbating the issue? So
and ever evolving at that, as you mentioned, what it looks like from one, we'll call it generation, or in this context, one stage to the next.
Well, and that, to pick on the metaphor a little further, the constellations today look much different, or slightly different than they did, hundreds of years ago, because the universe is changing, right? So Leo doesn't, all those stars that make up Leo don't fit the exact same way that they did when they were originally called Leo, right? And so we've got to adapt. What we knew even sometimes a year ago doesn't necessarily mean that that'll be applicable for the next year. So
because the universe has changed in that industry in the
Absolutely.
Year. Yes.
Exactly.
COVID has taught us that.
What a year. That's right.
So when we work with our clients, we right now we're able to do that on Zoom, and we pull up a whiteboard, and Eric pulls out using his iPad, and we use our constellation framework as the basis for our conversations. And one of the things that we love about it is it's something that you don't need us as experts in this to be able to do. You can take this idea and you can use it in your daily work. And it has three main components. It has we have. So you think about all of the resources that you have, all the things that you have going into your business, going into your department, whatever that might be. You have people, you have processes, you have equipment, you have whatever that might be. You have networks and supporters and customers. The next area is we do. So then you think about all the things that you do. You do marketing, you do sales, you do your product or service, whatever that might be. And the main thing, the reason that we're doing this is so that you can change the world with your business, so that you can change the world with your product or service or expertise. And so everything that we do when we're working with our clients is moving towards a so that. You don't have an efficient business if you're not moving somewhere intentionally. So we often, even though this goes left to right, as Eric's drawing it out, he drew out, we have, we do, and so that. So that is the biggest. So that is the pinnacle of everything. So we will sit down with our clients and we'll say, we start at the end. What's your so that? What's the thing that you want to change in the world? How is the world going to be different because of what you were creating? And then we can move backwards. This can work at the biggest level of the ultimate goal of your company. And it can work with, how are we going to improve our digital marketing presence next month? So you can use it at both levels. Okay.
So your resources, what you're doing with those resources, and what is created in the world from that. We have, we do, so that.
Absolutely. And then for those of us who love to get into spreadsheets instead of creativity, all of the lines, all of the things that are connecting everything, that's where you can find your data. That's where you can find what you want to start tracking. My background's actually in social work and evaluation and management. And so I call myself an accidental entrepreneur. So most of my work has always been in spreadsheets, in analyzing data and all of that. And so when I, partner with Eric and his creativity, we find that blend of, we don't sit in the creativity. We don't start with the data. We have to figure out how it blends together.
The humans are not computational machines. We're a mix of emotion and logic. We're a mix of creativity and hard facts. And so often I think we address one, or we put a lot of weight in one of them, but we don't necessarily know how to get at the other. And you know, in this day and age, with conversations around culture, conversations around you know, EQ, emotional intelligence, you know, creativity, and feeding kind of that side of the human equation is really important.
Absolutely. You got the right brain, left brain. I've seen very effective partnerships where one party is excellent at the visuals, has no comprehension of the numbers. So the union of those two and the power that could create, having both sides filled in.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then one of the other things that Eric will often put together as we're doing these drawings is these little icons. So what he drew out was the circles with the lines, but then he also adds in a few icons. That's usually things that we want to note, things that are really important, things that we want to stick in our brains. Because the finished product, when you're working on something like this, you're setting your strategy for your company, you're setting the vision going forward. That's meant to be shared. That's meant to be to be done in collaboration with your team, with your co-founders, with your investors, whoever is relevant, who's a relevant stakeholder for you, is who needs to be in conversation with this.
We use visuals. We know, like, as business people, we know that visuals are important in our marketing, right? We know it's important in our communication, and that we need to put these things together, but we don't use it in the boardroom very often. And we expect people to go away from meetings and remember everything that was said from, you know, the words in the air and the notes that they took. But what is great about visuals is that they solidify some of those meanings that might be confusing. I might say one word to you or a phrase to you, and it rings differently, you know, and you store that differently in your mind. We think we're on the same page, but we're not. But if we can bring that visual into it, we get on the same page. And then when we leave, we both remember, right? We both have that kind of image to trigger the important idea, or the new direction, or that centering belief that is important for us to be working on the same page, even if we're not in the same space.
Absolutely. And I've always found it interesting how people learn, how people educate themselves in different fashions. You know, in grade school, you have the teacher who's writing on the board while speaking, maybe showing some visuals on top of that. And because everyone absorbs and is able to retain in different fashions. So you're talking to it, and then you have, you know, the gear logo here, or the chart logo that I see, the human element and the we have logos that you're mapping out, and really being able to make it all come to life for everyone who's participating in the discussion.
Absolutely.
I like the simplicity element as well too, where it sounds like you can make a very in-depth process feel very easy with 3 simple stages, a few logos around each, versus 3 pages with 5 paragraphs on each. It's a different experience. You feel like you can really grasp it in a quick fashion.
Well, one of the things that in talking with your team, and anticipating coming up on and talking on here to address the audience you have, that scaling is really important, right? And if everything is different every time you have a conversation or every time you work a problem, it's hard to scale that. It's hard to scale chaos and ambiguity. What we've found, in a number of the different businesses that have started in TrueScribe, in Squiggle, in Relumed, is that if you can find the pieces that are that exist every time you approach a problem or approach the creation that you're doing, and find ways to solidify those things, bring order to them and capture them. One, to predict them, right? You can improve them. You can capture them so that you can then train them to other, teach them to other people. And then, you kind of eliminate or narrow down the things that are fluid, right? Because where there isn't concrete, there's fluidity. So, with TrueScribe, with creating whiteboard video, we found that we could make the style one of our solids, right? Our concrete things. So we generally pitched the same visual style that our artists worked in. We knew that we were working, again, video in a certain frame, right? And that we were going to work in a certain amount of time, minute and a half to 3 minutes. So there's certain constants that we knew we could work with. What was different then was the story that got put through the process, the client experience and their level of information. So that allowed us to then focus on what things couldn't we scale, right? We can't scale that person's experience, right? That needed to be personal. But we could build everything else to support those constants. You would think that a conversation is something that is just amorphous. But even in visualization, that's a creative space, that there are some things that often come up in business conversations, right? Whether it be, as Marita said, the big vision of the company, where you have this 10-year, sometimes 100-year goal for where you're going to change the world. And then what are you going to do to accomplish that? And what are the resources that you're going to consume or need to build up to do those actions? Or if you're talking about planning the next quarter's new capabilities that you're building, or the new marketing you're going to put out, you still have an outcome that you want to have happen. And you're still going to have actions and activities that are going to make that happen. And you still have to consume resources. It's an input, output, outcome system. And this exists almost like when I wake up and decide what I'm going to eat for breakfast. I could break that down into these 3 steps.
Yeah.
And so being able to have a system like this definitely sets us up to be able to scale this creative process, teach other people how to do it, bring and ultimately bring visual facilitation into more conversations and make it a more common phrase in business. As Marita said, it's not the buzzword at the moment, but maybe it becomes just a part of every conversation in the future.
Sure. And it makes sense. Input, output, outcome. We like to break down our recommendations, our processes, our systems into 3. I feel people can remember 3 terms very easily. So instead of spending energy on remembering the process, it's more about what's going inside. Input, output, outcome, being able to replicate that, operate at scale, and see what it produces from there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things that we like to do with this is that sometimes it's hard to explain to people what to expect when we have a session like this. And I'm sure many of you listening have organized businesses or products where it's kind of hard to explain that side of it. So you talk about the benefit, right? And so what we talk about with this is that it brings order to chaos, right? It allows us to make things that are invisible visible, and allows us to take things that are complex and make them more simple. And if you can take the unknown and the intangible and make it more tangible, then our hope is that becomes of high value to the people we serve.
And it's enjoyable.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So yeah, that's another recommendation for anybody out there. Make sure that the thing you're doing is fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think about my partner, Tim. He's a big whiteboarder. We've spent a lot of time, going through sessions pre-COVID, even made a point to go down to the office during the toughest stages to be able to whiteboard out. And for that reason, it makes, the very complicated feel simple. That's why, I mentioned we categorize into 3 as well, even the name of the podcast, which is my philosophy towards marketing, summarized in 3 words, which is difficult to do. Again, you're making it complex, and finding 3 categories: test, optimize, scale, that are, applied to all marketing campaigns, applied to all recommendations that we put together internally here. Not as visually friendly or appealing as what you guys are doing with a visual facilitation system. And just to get a better idea, how long does this process take? If a group approached you and said, hey, we're at this point, we want to be able to market to these audiences and hit these results. Maybe they don't even have that much of their plan ironed out yet. what are the typical timelines? Is this something that just happens in a few hours or a few weeks, few months? What is the overall duration of the process?
Yeah, it really depends on what someone wants out of it. When we do just a general map of somebody's business, just their what we call their initial constellation, that's usually about a 90-minute or 2-hour process, and something that they can enter into really easily. We also love to be able to bring in teams and do that work with a team. So we will offer interviews with different team members and bring in teams for collaborating on something. So we can spend a couple months on an engagement where people will meet with us and do their constellation, and then we work with their team over time to make sure that they're aligned. Because even if it's out of the founder's head, it's still not going to do anything until we know that it's kind of made its way into the team. So yeah, we can. The other thing that we love to be able to do is a half-day session or a longer session where we just work really closely with their team to help them solve some sort of problem. It might be we need to get our figure out where these roles fit in. Our team is growing and things are kind of feeling squishy right now. What do we do with that? How do we make sure that people are doing the right things? So we can work with them on that. So yeah, it can be really varied. And the more that you bring this in, the more fun it is, and the more you want to be repeating it.
Yeah. A lot of times in doing it with teams, it's kind of about getting feedback from a lot of different places. So sometimes in the before times, often you'd bring a lot of people in one place and you'd try and concentrate that, right? You would try and get all that feedback bouncing around and capture it within like a 2, 3 to 6 hour time frame.
Nobody wants to do Zoom for 6 hours.
That's tough. But one of the things that we can do, and as Marita said, that intensity can change. And we're with some of our clients, we're able to do kind of an initial deep dive or get the whole picture, and then we find a gap, or we find a thing that we want to work on, or a plan that we want to help them outline, or a problem to unpack. And then we might do a second session and maybe then a check-in, or we get into a cadence where, every month or every 3 months, we are kind of coming back, seeing how the plan has changed, and getting feedback and looking back, et cetera. So like we said, it depends on the client, what they want to get out of it, how many people that we want to work with and get input from, and then how often we want to kind of come back to that and check our work.
Move to a month, 3-month type cadence, somewhere in there, making sure it's living and present through all the team members, and even in the actions of those team members and how it lives with their clients or their users. And do you find similarities, whether you're working with groups in the same industry or groups in the same stages? Are there any type of consistencies that you see working on, one system after another?
A lot of folks that we work with we're talking to them at a point of change, at a point of needing to transition. And I feel like we often feel like we're always in that stage. But one of the similarities with our clients is they're ready to embrace that. So whatever that might be, if it's, I need to refine my sales process, or I need to figure out how to build out the courses that we're doing now, or I need to figure out how to take the leap into entrepreneurship. Often we'll work with really early stage folks that are just trying to figure out, is this a business? Yeah. Am I doing this? So we can help them map that out. Or
they've just had an influx of new team members, or trying to figure out how it all fits together because things have shifted. And so with this, what's the new normal? What's the new kind of reality? Sometimes the new culture, and people want to know how they fit into that, right? Because change is hard to communicate too. But times of growth, times of stagnation. So it's when the status quo isn't working anymore, and we've got to learn more about who we are now to be able to move forward.
Absolutely. And I like how you mentioned growth as well too, where it's working at the current stage, but these new elements are being brought in, whether that's new team members, new vendors, new resources. How does the company operate at that point? Input, output, outcome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
When we talk about testing, like when you're in a position to hire new people, like you think you know what you need, right? I need to hire 2 more engineers or 10 more engineers. I need to bring on somebody in HR. I need to add a capability that, again, the founder trying to wear many hats is kind of doing at a surface level, but we got to go deeper. And so you come up with a plan for that. What I've found, unfortunately, is that often the first time I come up with, hey, I need a new position, I write up a job description, I hire for it. Often that first time I get it wrong, right? And so I need to reevaluate. So, especially when you're hiring multiples of a position or trying to get a new dynamic in the team, it's a lot of testing, seeing if that works, and then coming back and saying, okay, let's rethink that, or what could we do differently? So, even people as a test.
Absolutely. And playing out where that goes from there, maybe optimizing the role a bit. But I was curious, how does this live in marketing? Do you see some of the ideas, some of the messaging, even some of the visuals that are coming to light, then extend themselves into the marketing, perhaps on social media channels, email, digital PR, their overall foundation with their site? Do you see this then later conveyed in the marketing that is an output of the organization?
Absolutely. So I actually spent the last couple of years working in marketing with TrueScribe, with the whiteboard video company that Eric co-founded. As I was calling myself an accidental entrepreneur before, I'm also an accidental marketer. So I just stumble into a whole lot of things.
Clumsy.
I know, I'm super clumsy like that. And one of the things that I've noticed with marketing is that there is a lot that you can do. You can spread your resources all over with, are you doing video marketing? What messaging are you testing? Are you, how is your email marketing campaigns? Any landing pages that you're creating, whatever that might be. There's a lot to be doing. What we are offering here is a way to help you figure out what matters for you. There's a bit of fear of missing out, of FOMO in marketing. And because there is so much that's working for so many folks out there. But you need to figure out what works for you. So in terms of how to use the system, I feel like this is a way to figure out, like, what should I be doing? What should I be focusing on? If I want to be building the whiteboard video company, and we want to be finding more Fortune 500, Fortune 100 clients, how do we figure out how to focus on that and not this other thing over here? In terms of using the visuals that Eric creates, one of the areas that this really focuses on is helping you identify your story. Story is at the backbone of marketing. You are not going to have an efficient or an effective marketing campaign without a compelling story, no matter what you are selling. And this pulls out that story.
It's crazy how many times we're working with a founder or a leader, and the stories that they tell aren't the ones that they think about using in their marketing. They're ashamed of the stories. They're ashamed of, maybe they feel like it's too simple or it's too personal, those sorts of things. But often we can show them how they do connect with the market. And so taking that time to kind of, again, pull things out and let them sit on a page and see how they weigh, it's hard to do with just our imagination sometimes. So, but yeah, that story.
Or even to keep that story to a concise, effective formula, a beginning, middle, end. Sometimes there's so much emphasis on the middle or beginning that it doesn't, do it justice. It's not easily consumable, or the takeaways aren't present to the audience. And I couldn't agree more. It's such an important part of the marketing of any channel at that.
Well, we talked about kind of how people are both left brain, right brain. They're both fact and emotion. Like, stories are that ultimate combination of data and effect and relationship and context, right? So I often talk about story as like the operating system of people. If you want to get an output from somebody, tell them a story, right? If you want to communicate information, tell them a story. Like, it's not just marketing, it's just how we work. When we're sitting around the table at dinner with our kids, and we want to communicate how we're feeling about something. We tell stories. So business should not be off limits for stories. They need to be in it everywhere.
The programming system of humans. I love that. I'm going to quote you on that. And it's so true. Being able to figure out the right way to resonate the material to inspire action from a communication, and the art of storytelling at that, with all authenticity behind it, but the way that info is conveyed.
Yeah, and stories scale, right? You can tell a story to an individual and get an effect. You can tell a story to hundreds of people, thousands of people, and get an effect. So, if we're looking for ways of high efficiency or high yield with low cost, like being able to hone that story and figure out what things hit with people is a very efficient use of time.
Absolutely. And I could picture the stories that are coming out of this and discussing, what a team has, what they do, so that this occurs, input, output, outcome, that it's just going to be that consistent factor that's showing up. And that's what I was asking about, the channels and the marketing and how it's living there. And, in terms of testing and, what to roll out, what to first, try in terms of an organization. You were starting to talk about team members and how that is essentially a test. What other recommendations do you have for founders on the line in terms of what to test for their story, for their constellation system, for their overall, towards their overall growth?
Great question. So I think, when it comes to testing, one of the, if we talk about story or even ideas, right, the first place we often go is our community, right? We share it with a friend, we share it with, a peer, somebody we look up to, a mentor, and we get a bounce back, right? And saying, hey, yes, that sounds good, or this doesn't sound good, right? So you start with the ideas. You start in the simulation, right, of the idea. And then you figure out, what can I do, or where can I use this first to test that idea out? Where we tested out was often in a place of lower risk, right? So we it started in a number of ecosystems with entrepreneurs who are just getting kicked off and trying to figure out where's my place in this, right? So there's a lot to gain, and not a lot on the line at that moment, right? And so find a way to take that idea and implement it in a low risk, easy kind of space, and just take in all the feedback. One of the things that's good with testing on a broad scale is right, you get your control, you figure out, hey, this is what I'm going to do, A, B, C, and then you compare it to that. For us, having that using this model, right, you could use this on a project. You have your inputs, your outputs, your outcomes, your we have as we do, so that, and you see how it impacts, was I able to go back and look at what I said I was going to do and then compare that. But then can I use that to think through how I'm going to do it differently next time, what I'm going to change, what I'm going to tweak. I have a visual record of what I said I was going to do. Now I have a visual record of 2.0, right? And then 3.0 and 4.0. And so some of it is using it in low risk spaces that you can get feedback really quickly, right?
Yes.
I think there's also the idea of trying to figure out what to test. Entrepreneurs and founders and leaders, they often have a lot of ideas and things coming at them, either things that you're coming up with on your own, or this investor thinks that this is the right choice, or this team member thinks that this is the right direction, or the right channel to use, or the right messaging to use. And I think, if you're using something like the Constellation framework, where you have a so that at the end, you always can do a quick alignment test. Does this fit? Am I just afraid of missing out on Clubhouse? Or do I really have an audience that I need to talk to on Clubhouse? Does it align with where we're going? And if you always do that little quick check, you're not going to find yourself overwhelmed with things that don't make sense for your business. You're going to be able to, with confidence, say, nope, that's not the right choice. We'll put that over here. We'll put that in someone else's bucket.
Yeah. I mean, something very discouraging is when you're testing a lot of surface level stuff and you're not feeling like you're getting anywhere, right?
Yeah.
Because you tested a little bit over here and a little bit over there and a little bit over there, but you're not getting the immediate feedback or the immediate response that you thought you were going to get, that hook, that traction. Like, we've been doing a lot more marketing on LinkedIn, and we've been putting out video content and visual content. What we don't know is what's the amount, or what's the time period, or what's the consistency to get that hook in the market, right? We don't have that answer, right? So we have to start somewhere. But if we were to be trying to do that in LinkedIn and Instagram and Twitter, and trying to spread ourselves out, then we would be thinking, oh, none of these places are good for us, right? So going in one place and pushing a little further and a little further and a little further and a little further is how we're going to find out where our where our thresholds are.
Mm-hmm. And prioritizing where to be, maybe by research around the channel, the audience, the industry, and making sure there's a long enough chapter behind it. So 3 months, 6 months, whatever it may be, don't spread yourself too thin in that period of time. And I really like the hierarchy around it in terms of, where do I want to be? Is Clubhouse just a place where I feel I need to be? What are my goals there? What do I want to measure a few months later? That is a great point.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that has happened in some of the meetings that we've had is when we're visualizing stuff, we can teams can easily figure out if they've spread themselves too thin once they've put everything on the board.
Right.
There's so many projects that are just stealth projects, right? Things that somebody says, oh, let's just try this over here and let's try this over here, or the visionary of the team is like, oh, I've got 3 ideas, different ideas for monetizing this. Let me get after all 3 of them. And you start seeing that you've got 50 balls in the air when you've only got half a dozen hands. So to be able to kind of get that scope, that picture of all of the things that you're putting time and energy and banking on, like you can wear yourself pretty thin pretty fast without even knowing it, if you're not careful.
Absolutely. And what about optimizing? So let's say someone's not being too careful, they're spreading themselves too thin, or even they're just focusing on one area, but they're not hitting the goals that they were looking towards. I know you're a month, 3-month type of cadence for updates to the system. What have you seen to be some of the most effective pivots, or even just optimizing towards what is working, as you see groups going through this?
Process.
Okay.
Process documentation. I think, being able to track what you're doing and tweak and really solidify a process is one of the strongest ways to optimize. I don't know, with visuals, what do you think?
It's interesting because, like I said, when you start putting everything on the board or on the whiteboard or whatever, you start to see, okay, what are all the things that we're doing? And I think, again, when you've got the right people in the room reflecting on that, you get some real strong gut checks, and then you can get some really strong data in to support, well, which things are pulling the most weight, right? The 80-20 rule. 20% of these things are doing 80% of the work for us. And so being able to kind of then start to cull some things, right? Optimization is focusing in on the things that are working and leaving behind the things that are not working, the chaff. And it's, we get sacred cows, we get, personal preferences and biases. One of the things that we were talking about recently was, think about SEO as a way of optimizing. Like when we started whiteboard, when it was whiteboard video, it started off as video scribing, and we were like, okay, video scribing is what we are. This is what we do. This is what's important, et cetera. And then, other people started searching keywords that were not that. And we're like, oh, whiteboard video. Okay, we can do whiteboard video.
Whiteboard animation.
And then somebody did animation. We're like, well, we're not animation. And so we kind of push it away. And then explainer video came out. We're like, well, that's pretty broad. We're very much this. But we spend a lot of time I guess we didn't spend enough time thinking about where people were at to be in front of them and to be present. We spent a lot of time holding on to what we thought was important to us, our brand words, our whatever. But, I guess what I'm trying to say is that, you've got to be open, let go of certain preconceived notions and be able to see all the things and see what's working, and then move towards it and be willing to let some things go.
Sure. We see that on the advertising placement side of things as well, too, where we have to cast a wide enough net. If we think, hey, this is the one audience and they're going to work, they're a perfect target, we can be missing all of these other groups. I love giving an example of a women's fashion brand where you would think, hey, we're going to advertise on lifestyle sites and these other types of media, where the top performing websites and apps, I should say, were real estate sites. Having women's fashion on real estate sites, we were able to kind of figure out the psychology and make assumptions towards that at a later time with a low-priced item compared to a dream type of purchase, one that audiences are often constrained by budget. But we would have never found that unless we were casting that wider targeting and being able to let the data tell us where we're getting the best performance. And again, it sounds like letting the audience tell you, hey, this is what I'm searching for, can play a large role in this too.
Yeah, sometimes, like you said, cast a big net. One of the examples for us is we're working with a consultancy, and the founder of this kind of in our process put out a lot of other things that they were passionate about. And what we discovered was that management consulting specifically was something that just resonated with them because it gets a bad name, but it's so imperative for organizations to grow and scale. Like that, the further away from the founder to the implementation that you get, you need kind of a separate layer to make that all work. But it's kind of the part that both parties love to blame for things. So he's got this passion about management, wants to train in management. And so from there, kind of through that discovery, he was like, I can focus in on that. I can align and optimize my passion, right? The thing that I'm most interested in and have the most, all those, I guess, interest and passion and expertise in, I can align that more towards that. And so being able to kind of put all the things out there and see, it's almost, it's a same kind of testing, but you're putting it on a board instead of, and aligning it to the individual or the founder or the team, to align to their passions, to optimize the passion.
Optimize the passion. And what about scaling? We were talking about how a story scales a bit earlier. I'm sure you've been part of these discussions, processes as organizations have scaled. Even as you mentioned, they'll often look for these resources when they're attempting to scale, when there's growth occurring in the organization. What recommendations do you have towards founders who are scaling?
Communicating vision is imperative. I think you used that word a minute ago. Imperative in scaling. Being able to clearly communicate that vision. As your team grows, as your audience grows, as any key stakeholders are growing, you need to be able to hold that. And being able to do that visually, like we've already talked about, is allowing you to bring in people who are visual learners. It's getting that conversation pulled into it, and it's making sure that that's at the center. So you can use this process of the Constellation framework to go over and over again, but you want that North Star, the ultimate so that of your company to stay, so that you keep moving towards it. And as you scale, a lot is going to change. A lot of moving parts have to keep changing, but you keep moving towards that same place, and you're going to be stronger for it.
Yeah. So like we said, you gotta, when you scale, you're starting to put more trust in a lot of other people, right? You've got 10 people on the front line, 20 people on the front line, interacting with customers, et cetera. So you need consistency. You need something. We talked about the version of the Constellation, or the story of the Constellation, where it's that spot in the sky that you're traveling in comparison to. your whole team needs to know where you're going so that they can move whatever the client throws at them or what the market throws at them. If they have to operate without being able to check with leadership at the top, that they know they have that North Star too to work against. So, as you scale, you get further away from being able to tell people directly how to work. They need that operating system to be clear so that they can, even if they don't make the exact right decision, that they're making it in the right spirit, or they're, making it with the right intent. And then, that vision also does a lot to, when you're trying to scale, when you're trying to grow, there's a lot of outside influences that are going to want to say, hey, come over here, come do that. Right. Whether it be FOMO in a new social platform pops up, hey, come over here and be an early adopter of this. But then you also have internal kind of pushes and seeing opportunities. Hey, we could go gangbusters over in this market. It could be a great opportunity for us to hit big and make a big splash, or we want to grow in quality, or we want to, a competing idea, we want to make it big and sell this thing. Like what you want to do with your business, that central focus changes how people all the way down and up grow, and the next steps you take. If you've got competing ideas on how you're going to scale, you're going to come, you're going to, I don't know how to describe it. You're just not going to scale fast. You're going to scale slower. You're going to scale in different directions. And pretty soon one of the heads of the beast is over here and another one's over here. And you're certainly not efficient with your time and your resources. So that central idea and that North Star is really important.
Absolutely. And as Marita was saying, well communicated throughout the entire organization, and having that repetition behind it as things continue to grow.
Yeah.
And consistently communicated. I think that's something that as leaders, it can be hard. You can say like, well, I told you that, 3 Thursdays ago, how come we're still asking about this? But people need that consistency of like, okay, is this still where we're going? Is this still what we're doing? I see all these other things have changed. What is the same? What can I trust? What can I have confidence in moving forward? How do I fit in? And if we can visualize that, if we can see that regularly, your team is going to have more confidence. Your marketing is going to reflect that. You're going to look more cohesive and like you know where you're going. So it's all a lot more exciting when you're in alignment.
That scaling, the thing that comes to mind too is trust. That everybody trusts that what you're saying is what you mean. What you say and what you do can be different, right? How you reward, how you praise, how you lift up, or the decisions the company makes to go in a direction. If it fits with the story you're telling, if it fits with that North Star, then people trust that, and they're going to move with you. They're going to push a little bit harder. They're going to move a little further. They know that they're contributing to something bigger. But if you're saying one thing, right? Hey, we have a story, but you're not operating that way, or half the people are and half the people are ignoring it, then it just doesn't feel like it's true. It doesn't feel like it's real.
Absolutely. And if there's one thing that marketing has taught me, it's that consistency and that trust are so closely tied to action. In fact, there's a saying, the more times an individual hears a piece of information from the more parties, the more they trust it, the more they believe it. So having it consistent across the board, having it something that the whole organization is living and breathing are so crucial.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, this has been so insightful for me. I'm going to have my team taking some notes on this, but wanted to ask, are there any closing remarks? Is there anything that you want to make sure to share with the audience before we wrap up here?
I think that paying attention to the things that are the emotional side, less concrete side of the way business works, the things that exist in people's head, that the same way we talk about branding as this, the ideas that people in the world, in your market have about your business is your brand. It's not something you own. It's something that exists outside. The same thing's true with, the organization and the stories and the ideals that you have. They exist in your team. They exist in the founder's head. And if you get them out, if you show them on paper, then everybody can be on the same page. Everybody can share them together, and they can be celebrated, and they can be used to help you know where to test, know how to scale, and optimize.
Excellent. Excellent. And if any listeners want to speak with you guys further, get in contact with you directly, what is your preferred method of communication?
You can find us at our website, which is relumed, RELUMED.com.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, Eric, Marita, thank you so much for joining today. This has been a pleasure speaking with you. I'm sure the audience is going to get a lot of it out as well here. Thanks again for being on.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Jason.
All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time.